More now on the wireless announcement we brought you live at the beginning of the show. The results of the sort of what's called a beachfront property in terms of wireless. The 700 megahertz spectrum auction are in. This is part of the spectrum that allows wireless companies, they can, the signal travels further. It will penetrate buildings. Let's say you're in the basement, you'll be able to get the call. This is very valuable. This has been part of a long called for auction on this 700 megahertz spectrum. The big three telcos, TELUS, Bell, and Rogers won 73 of the 97 licenses. They go across the country. Remember, the spectrum, as I say, it's like an invisible highway that your wireless data drives on. And the block that was up for sale is, the express lane of that. So let's joined now by the Minister of Industry, James Moore. He's here. $5.27 billion is the headline, which is a record. The last auction, 2009, I think $4.2 billion. What are the benefits of this? 4.25.
The benefits of the money coming to the government, well, it comes in, the companies have to pay this money to the government over the next 30 days. To them, it's a one lump sum shot. But if through accrual accounting for us, it's meted out over 20 years. So it's actually a $260 million increase to revenue. But that aside, what really matters to your listeners is that we have 4 wireless players in every part of the country who are now going to be competing for their affection. And we know already that in those regions of the country where 4 wireless players exist already, more competition means lower prices, it means more consumer choice, it means better services. And so through this auction, we put in place a policy framework that allowed the possibility for more competition, and it's been realized. And so we'll see in the coming weeks and months as these companies talk about how they're going to engage the market, what kind of services they're going to provide. We'll see how they position themselves.
All right. Some analysts had said you would get $2 billion. When we carried your press conference live, you were obviously pleased to get $5.27 billion for this. You've been asked this. When Rogers pays $3.3 billion for 22 licenses, when Bell spends $566 million, when TELUS spends $1.1 billion, do they have to recoup their costs by saying, okay, we got this 700 megahertz, we're now going to drive that right back to the customer and jack our rates, even though there's more competition, but they'll jack their rates to recoup the money?
3 things. 1, these are very profitable companies. 2, these are companies, this is the cost of doing business. 3, the same anxiety was raised back in 2008 when we had our AWS auction and $4.25 billion was raised. People said the same thing. They said prices would go up. The truth is prices went down. Prices have gone down on average 20% all across this country. So when you have the counterbalance to that conspiracy theory is, well, A, the fact of what's happened before, but B, is that you now have 4 players in the country that have the capacity in all the different regions of the country to compete for the consumer's affection. And I don't think raising prices is typically a great way to gain more customers. So we'll see what the competition brings forward as an option, a choice option for the consumer.
All right. There's a lot of talk about the 4th player. There was talk that you wanted someone from outside the country. There was some speculation that Verizon, the giant U.S. telco, would come in. They backed out. If I look at the numbers here, sort of the 4th player emerging is Videotron. This is a Quebec company owned by Quebec, or they spent $233 million for 7 licenses. Now, for the first time, in Southern Ontario, in Alberta, and British Columbia. Are they a legitimate 4th player, even though $233 million is not exactly a giant investment for them?
Yes, they are. I mean, they're a market leader in the province of Quebec. They do very well. They introduced, they say there's debate about this, but I think most people recognize them as the people who introduced Pick and Pay on the television side. They also have the capacity to bundle services, which is a different approach to engaging the market. We'll see what they plan to do going forward, but they're for real. Quebecor is a very large company. Videotron is a powerful company, and they've been very successful in the province of Quebec. How they plan to engage the other markets, we'll see. How the incumbent big 3 players plan to counter that market reaction, we'll see. The bottom line is consumers are going to win because there's going to be a jockeying. And
well, some people will remember back in 2007, Videotron actually tried to impose this 100 gigabyte per month download. Consumers rejected it, but they wanted to charge. Yeah. And now, is that a foreshadowing that, yes, they've got this great spectrum, yes, you'll get more data, but here's a company that's got a record of trying to put limits on that and actually charging the consumer?
Or one could say that maybe they learned their lesson and they've moved away from it and they've been very successful in the market as a consequence. We'll see. I mean, look, we'll see. They have time to deploy. All these companies can deploy their spectrum as early as April. So this is going to come right quick. And I suspect some of the incumbent players, you mentioned Rogers, who paid the most for the spectrum that they got, they did, but they also got the highest quality of spectrum. I suspect they have had their marketing campaigns chambered and ready to launch for quite some time. And I think consumers should be very open-minded going forward about the kind of choices they're going to see in the marketplace.
Explain why the opposition is saying one question, rural areas. Are there guarantees? I know there's some within the auction rules and the license rules, but are there guarantees that rural and remote areas will be served by the 700 megahertz?
Yes, we have the most aggressive rural build-out policies of any country that has comparable wireless services in the world. Any company that has the spectrum auction on this national footprint, they have to have rural build-out to 90% of their license area within 5 years, 97% within 10 years. It's very aggressive. And also we have the 2500 megahertz spectrum auction next year, which will bolster that capacity. And on top of that, we have Budget 2014, $305 million investment from the Government of Canada into fixed wired internet service provider, or satellite service, but internet service to rural communities all across the country. So as a government, we've gone above and beyond in previous efforts. The current budget, the wireless spectrum auction of 700 and 2500, Conservatives, the vast majority of rural Canadians have Conservative members of Parliament, and we've delivered for them.
What about use it or lose it? By the way, I assume you want to deliver to all Canadians, not just consumers, conservatives.
Of course, all consumers.
You said it.
You said rural. I said rural. That was that context. All Canadians will benefit. All Canadians will benefit from this.
What about use it or lose it? We remember Shaw bought Spectrum, squatted, and there is some concern that companies said, "Look, we know this is valuable real estate. Let's buy it for now, and we'll squat."
That is the government's policy. They can't squat. They have to deploy. They have timelines to deploy. Videotron does. All the 8 companies who got Spectrum today, they all have timelines in which they have to deploy. And second is, they can't just walk away. The $5.27 billion that's coming to the Government of Canada, including the $233 million from Videotron, all this money, they are legally obligated to pay. They cannot back away from that obligation. As soon as they entered the auction, they can't walk away. So they have an obligation to deploy. They have an obligation to pay for the spectrum that they got. They can't walk away. And if the spectrum is not used, then we will claw it back and we will reissue it.
You can claw it back.
You can claw it back.
Where do you go from here? I know there's another 2,500 megahertz auction. Will the government take steps to try to introduce or invite foreign ownership into this business? I know they tried. Verizon didn't happen. Some people accuse this government's policy of failing. You couldn't entice the fourth player. Now you got Videotron in there. Will you consider to invite a foreign telco to come in?
We have liberalized already. We've liberalized rules in a way that has invited more investment to the marketplace. That investment has come before, but we have now a good mix after this auction. We'll see what the reaction is of the market to this. But I don't think anybody in full sobriety can actually say that we are in a position to say anything other than consumers are the big winners of this spectrum auction. I spoke to John.
By the way, people are tweeting me and they're asking, ask the minister when my cell phone bill is going to go down because,
it's gone down on average 20% since 2008. It'll go down more with competition as a result of this auction.
But when? I mean, will people see the results of this April, May, when?
Well, each company is now going to tell the market when they're going to engage there, but they can do it as soon as possible. We went from analog to digital television at record speed at no cost to taxpayer. We've had the spectrum auction started in January. It ended now. It can be deployed in April. We have a rapid time for deployment. So I think consumers should look for some very good news on the horizon. And by the way, what a tectonic shift that we've seen on this file, by the way. If you talk to John Manley when he was industry minister not that long ago, they were pushing and begging and hoping for a second wireless player in all parts of this country. We now have, as a result of the policies led by the Prime Minister, we have 4 wireless players in every region of this country competing for the affection of consumers with high-quality spectrum, the latest technology. This is a big win for consumers.
All right, so the critics say you couldn't attract a big foreign player?
Well, we wanted competition. It didn't have to be a big foreign player, and we got the competition, and consumers will benefit.
Speaking of foreign